This Week in Microbiology is brought to you by MicrobeTV and is supported by the American Society for Microbiology. To learn more about microbes, visit microbe.tv and asm.org. This is TWiM, This Week in Microbiology, episode 344, recorded on October 30th, 2025. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and you're listening to the podcast that explores unseen life on Earth. Joining me today from Charleston, South Carolina, Michael Schmidt.
Well, hello, everyone.
It's been so long, I forgot where you are.
I'm still here in beautiful Charleston, where today we have a little bit cooler. It's about 17 C or 62 degrees F, and the sun is out, so it's almost Chamber of Commerce weather. We just need a few more degrees to get us to that magic 20, and then we'll be in the chamber zone.
Here it's pouring. You can see the rain clouds.
Wow.
16 C and pouring all day. Well, they only go, 12 a.m., 1 a.m. It's raining. Also joining us from St. Louis, Missouri, Petra Levin.
It's a pleasure to be here. And we had the pouring rain you guys are now having. So I can tell you that probably maybe in 24 hours, 36, it's going to be gorgeous. Very crisp, very fall.
Looking forward to that. And from Puget Sound, Washington, the TWiM adjacent Mark Martin. Hello, Mark.
Hey, tomorrow's my favorite holiday, so Halloween or happy microbial Halloween to everyone.
Well, in fact, today we have a Halloween-themed episode.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy these episodes, folks, we'd love to have your support. Go to microbe.tv/contribute. We have to pay for the production of these podcasts. And we don't do ads, as you know. We depend on your support. Today is a food-themed episode. And before we start, I need to ask each one of you a question, okay? Just answer. I'll start with Mark. Mark.
Yes?
Yogurt or chocolate?
I have to choose?
Yep, pick one.
How about chocolate? How about yogurt-covered chocolate? Come on.
No, you got to choose one.
Yogurt.
Petra.
Chocolate. And I'm giving out candy tomorrow. And I think that the little kids of St. Louis would be very disappointed if I gave them yogurt.
Michael.
Chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate is amazing, but yogurt is better for you, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't think I could sell that.
No.
I don't think I could sell that.
But Mark had a good idea. Chocolate-covered yogurt. That's interesting.
Or the chocolate-covered yogurt raisins.
Yeah.
So you get fruit, yogurt, and raisins.
Yeah,
good.
But there are all these like raisin haters that I keep running into, which
Why would you hate a raisin? They're lovely.
I agree. But boy,
I think
do I hear
a raisin
that.
is good in the right place at the right time. It's when you find a surprise raisin that they're not lovely.
So my grandmother, who was from Italy, used to make meatballs, and she put raisins in them.
Absolutely. Those are the best meatballs.
And of course, the raisins get very moist through all the cooking. And a little breadcrumbs too, and it break. A lot of all that meat is hard, but you put some breadcrumbs and raisins. It's really lovely. So there you go. There's raisins and meat. That's interesting. Well, yes. Today we have a paper on yogurt and a paper on chocolate, and we'll start with yogurt, Michael.
All right. So this week we got a real treat. We're talking now. Don't get grossed out about the ant holobinot as a yogurt starter. That's right. You heard it. Ant yogurt. This paper is entitled Making Yogurt with the Ant Holobinot Uncovers Bacteria, Acids, and Enzymes for Food Fermentation, and was authored by Veronica Sinot, Veronica Ramos Viana, Diego Prado Vasquez, and a whole cast of other characters, including 2 Michelin-starred chefs. Now, Sinot and colleagues published this fascinating story in the journal iScience, and I don't think we've ever covered a paper from that particular journal, and it's in the Cell family of journals, and it is an open access paper, so you can actually follow along with us.
Michael, do you think if companies sold yogurt with a picture of an ant on the side, it would do well?
No. at least not here in the United States. So let's start with the graphical abstract. And that's what really got me intrigued when Mark actually threw this paper over the transom and said, "What about this?" And I thought, this graphical abstract really has it all. It's got milk fermentation, and milk fermentation has a rich history in which the food, the culture of the community that is employing the milk, as well as the environment, all come together to aid us, the reader of this paper, through their graphical abstract by first showing us what they're going to describe in the manuscript, namely how the microbes associated with the red ant are responsible for the inoculum used to facilitate the fermentation of the milk into a useful end product, the yogurt that many of us consume each morning for breakfast, lunch, or even dinner in its frozen form.
But I don't consume ant yogurt.
No.
How did they? What was the inspiration for putting ants and yogurt together?
I'm glad you asked that. One of the authors,
I try not to think of them together.
One of the authors is from the region where the ant yogurt originated from.
Is it Bulgaria, right?
Yes. And so this is the novelty. The novelty here is simply outstanding. They dove deep into an historically overlooked practice of making yogurt in Turkey and Bulgaria, where they simply added ants or ant larvae or ant eggs to milk.
You have to wonder. I mean, humans are always inventive.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But you have to wonder what dudes thought, let me throw this ant into milk and see what happens, right? Or woman, who knows?
This is a fascinating discipline. This is termed ethnography, which is a word I remembered learning for the SAT once upon a time. That means the scientific description of the customs of individual peoples and culture. Now, these authors used rigorous microbiology. I don't know if the Michelin-starred chefs were involved in the micro, but they brought the inspiration to figure out the biocultural mechanism behind it. Now,
Michael, I think I'm going to take a cup of grape juice and throw an ant in and see if I can make wine.
No, you're going to probably make vinegar because of the acids, the acidobacter that are endemic in the formic acid.
That wasn't the fun answer, Michael.
I know. I know. So the ant itself contributes formic acid as well as very potent proteases to the mix, helping with the initial acidification and the coagulation of the milk. The microbes that transfer from the ant then proliferate in the milk, and these are just traditional lactic acid and acetic acid bacteria that many of us who have taught undergraduate microbiology expose our students to when we make sauerkraut, we make pickles, we make yogurt. We have these starter cultures that we encourage our students to use to effectively discover the wonder that is food microbiology. And here, these authors learn that the dominant microbe is one that you likely, again, experienced with your morning toast or your lunchtime sandwich if you happen to be lucky enough to have made your toast or sandwich with a delightful piece of sourdough bread. And that microbe that gives sourdough its distinctive flavor is Fructi Lactobacillus sanfrancisnus. So we have a sourdough bug from the ant making the yogurt. It's a wonderful example of this ecological niche crossover. And this work is so compelling that it was used then by these Michelin-starred chefs in a restaurant in Copenhagen, Denmark, to create these modern gastronomic applications that we're going to learn about, like ant yogurt ice cream. They made an ice cream sandwich that looks like an ant and a tangy mascarpone cheese. Now, this is a triple threat investigation. Aside from the novelty of their observation, this is quite a study from a diverse group of investigators who tackled this ethnography conundrum of ant yogurt through a very holistic approach that I think the human race is well to discover again. In the manuscript, they principally tested the hypothesis that yogurt fermentation can be initiated by this ant holobina. So we have the ant plus its microbes plus the enzymes from the ant. So it includes both the ant and the microbial communities inherent to it. So what they learned from their field work, and so this is a real world, still going on traditional practice in Bulgaria. They uncovered this the good old fashioned way through shoe leather based field work in Bulgaria through the conduct of interviewing the community that had a historic memory of, and through an oral history of the practice of using ants in the making of yogurt for their families. Curiously, this is also the ancestral home of one of the authors, Dr. Sarah Kova. And in fact, they used an ant colony that was pointed out by the community to start the fermentation, which was the ant species Formica rufa and Formica polycenta, which are nothing more than the redwood ants that we probably have in our backyards because these species are native to North America. The next section of their paper is where we go to the restaurant. We go to this.
Mike, well, before you go there, I just want to say they used 4 ants.
Yes.
They added 4 ants to milk. And they put it, they heated it because the traditional method is to put the milk in the ant colony.
I was going to get to that, but thank you. Now I don't.
Oh my gosh, it's so to keep it warm. That's so cool.
This is reminiscent of moonshining in the backwoods of South Carolina.
Ant shining?
Where the moonshiners actually bury their ferment in a cave or in the dirt, and they cover it with mud and such to keep the fermentation warm so they can make moonshine in the winter. Now, spoiler alert. We're at the Alchemist, and I put into the show notes so you can actually go and discover this restaurant. It's expensive. It's about $1,000 a person, but you get 50 courses over the span of 6 to 8 hours.
It's too much. I can't eat 50 courses.
Over 6 to 8 hours? No, not me.
Each one is this big.
Yeah, they're tiny.
I'm
They're
putting my
about the
fingers
size of an
together so
ant.
they're like half a centimeter apart. They're ant portions, not.
There's one here in
Vincent
New York
portions.
City, actually.
Yeah.
I looked it up, and you have to apply for
To
a
get in.
reservation.
It's an entertainment as much as it is eating.
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah.
So you may want to listen to this after your dessert course tonight, so as you don't raid your fridge and say, "Where's the frozen yogurt or ice cream I bought?" They developed 3 culinary applications using the live ants, and they also used ants that were frozen and subsequently dehydrated. First, they created an ant witch, which contained ice cream derived from sheep yogurt made with the live ants. And again, as Vincent said, 4 ants as the starter culture. And that's illustrated beautifully in figure 2D. The ice cream is then sandwiched between an ant-infused gel in Tule cookies, which is this beautiful, delicate, thin, crisp French wafer that you put on fancy desserts at fancy restaurants. And the sandwich is then shaped as an ant that they had a laser cut stencil. The ants then provide this distinct pungent acidity that contrasts with the fat of the milk, and they serve it at a frozen temperature of a negative 11 degrees C, and it balances the dessert. They secondly made a goat mascarpone, and my experience with mascarpone is with cannolis, where they're tucked into a cannoli shell, but this sounds equally delicious, and the flavor was pungent and aromatic, similar to a mature pecorino cheese. And the third, I don't know if I would drink, is a milk wash cocktail, which is a dairy-based cocktail dating back to the 1700s. And classically, this milk is curdled with acid from a citrus fruit and subsequently filtered to remove the dairy solids, resulting in a clear beverage with more richness and body. In this case, the dehydrated ants induced the curdling and the separation of milk, and the cocktail had the fruity notes similar to an apricot liqueur and brandy that often displays tastes of raisins, dried figs, and caramelized apples.
This sounds like a review, fruity notes.
Fruity notes. This figure, though, is beautiful. It's the whole figure, because F shows you the different steps. I think that's what they're doing.
It is.
Making
Yeah.
it's very complicated.
So, Michael, you drop these ants in; they must not live for long, right?
No.
They drown. So, I'm going to say we need to protect the ants. We can't be doing this with ants.
Okay. Vincent's PETA stripes are showing. So,
we did a paper here on TWiM where they were worried about the bacteria being used
Yes,
for
yeah.
work. So the ants.
yeah, we got to worry about the ants.
Michael, are
But-
you having a flashback to the menu? Because I'm having a complete flashback to the menu here. The movie, which if you haven't
Yes.
seen.
I haven't seen it. No.
That's funny because I'm having a flashback. Was there a movie like Ants or something in the 1990s?
Oh, yeah.
There probably was.
Yeah.
But the authors are still the scientists that
Mm-hmm.
the journal indicates that they are. One important caveat that the authors offered, and I strongly encourage everyone who's going to do this experiment, is they use caution against this general application unless the cultural practitioners are cultural practitioners of this practice of using ants or skilled food microbiologists. There are several food safety concerns that arise. For example, the live ants may contain a parasite that can cause negative health consequences for humans, although their prevalence is low. And what they did to lessen the likelihood that the crust ants mixture contained a parasite is that they filtered the mixture through a 100 micron pore size filter where the parasite is on average bigger than the pore size of the filter. And they also froze the mixture, which, unlike bacteria, will kill the parasite. The other thing worth mentioning is the authors raised that the ants are not included among the 4 insects authorized for sale as a food product in the European Union, according to a specific health regulation of the EU on the use of novel foods. And the novel food regulation considers all foods not listed as being traditionally consumed in the EU prior to 1997 to be unauthorized. So
it's like not having a GRAS designation, right?
correct.
But are you eating the ants or are you eating the ants' dirty bathwater?
You're eating the bathwater. And
God.
Which, whatever. But do we really need the EU to sign off on bathwater?
I have, back to the microbiology. But as you might expect, the authors employed high-level omics using a comprehensive suite of tools, including 16S targeted ribosomal RNA sequencing, quantitative PCR, HPLC to identify the organic acids, and of course, proteomics to confirm the contribution of the bacteria, the acids, and the enzymes. And so this is really a fantastic multi-pronged analysis of what is then truly addressing their central hypothesis and helps them address whether or not the holobino, whether or not you need the whole ant in order to get this wonderful yogurt product. And as expected, the microbiomes of the 2 Formica species were lactic acid bacteria and acetic acid bacteria, Actitobacteriaceae and Lactobacteriaceae, and then an obligate intracellular bacterium, Anaplasmaceae, which is very similar to Rickettsia or Ehrlichia or Anaplasia, and they can actually cause disease in humans and other animals, but they're typically vectored mainly by ticks. So this species of Anaplasia probably is not pathogenic for humans, but it could be if you don't have the right, if you will, holobino in the animal. And the bacterial families in genera, they show us beautiful plots in both the supplemental as well as their figures 3 and 4. And the Formica species are endemic in the northern hemisphere of our planet. And they, across the clade of the Formica, they have lactic acid bacteria or these sourdough starters, the fructolactobacillus. So again, the authors really add to our understanding of how this novelty really bears out. But they point out they found that the yogurt made with the live ants was produced a stably and highly predictable bacterial community, making the ant holobinote a reliably consistent starter culture, which is sort of foreshadowing the paper that we're going to do next on chocolate, because we don't know what's the magic bullet out of the ant that really gives you this reproducible. Right now, we have to use the whole ant. In the next paper, as Mark's going to show with us, we really have to get down to business. And again, they showed species specificity, and the thing they caution about is, again, whether or not it was the incubation in the ant mound that actually contributed to it. And so they don't know if everything is really up to snuff. There may be some secret sauce going on in that ant mound that we don't actually know about.
Yeah, you think there's some volatiles that might be involved?
Maybe, because it will impart to the milk. But all in all, this paper is a beautiful convergence of culture and microbiology, showing us that when it comes to fermentation, nature, and history, the most exciting starters might just be found in an ant mound. A fantastic look at biodiversity. And most importantly, I think it is a great way to level the scientific mystery to the general public, because, for many years, we didn't know how it worked. We just knew it worked. And so now we're bringing the science back to it.
They make the point here that making yogurt with ants isn't sustainable because these ant species are endangered, apparently. Right? So big yogurt companies cannot do that.
Go out and harvest them.
But of course, if you figured out exactly what's in the ant that does it, then you could make your own starter, right?
I'm kind of shocked that there are ants in Europe that are endangered.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how do you... I'm not going to say how do you know, because there are people, entomologists, who spend their whole life looking at this.
Yeah, of course.
But, this idea of ethnomicrobiology is completely fascinating to me. And Michael, do you know... Actually, Vincent, have you been to Sardinia?
No, I have not.
They have something there called casu marza. Are you familiar with it?
No.
It is a soft cheese that is riddled through with a cheese fly larvae, which you and I would call maggots.
Uh-huh.
And it's like a big deal in Sardinia. It's a cultural thing. There's this whole story, and I think the people who like it make jokes for people who are squeamish like me. You've got to pinch them before you eat it, that kind of thing.
To kill them.
But we don't know the role of what takes place during the cheese ripening that takes place there. And the idea of other creatures being involved with it is fascinating. We know, for example, that fruit flies are highly attracted to certain odorants that you see during fermentation. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to learn that we are partners in making fermented foods.
Do you also eat the worm at the bottom of the tequila bottle, Mark?
Once.
Of course, once.
I was just thinking about being squeamish about food because, I don't really, these tiny ants, I don't know if I'd care if they're small, but like any bigger maggots, no way. But I mean, I happily eat bivalves of almost any kind. And I eat so
snails.
I don't know what it means. It's like, I just grew up eating them from when I was little. So they don't, steamed clam and pulling the sheath up, it's valve doesn't really faze me, but it probably would if I started now.
No, people eat chocolate-covered ants all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gee. What a
Yeah, but I think that's
between
like the ants are tiny. There's something about a maggot.
Yeah.
So this episode is now titled Chocolate-Covered Ants.
So the other thing that was interesting here, they note that so when you make wine, the microorganisms come from the farm.
The terroir.
But they say wine yeasts can originate from social wasps.
Ooh.
So the wasps deposit their yeasts on the grapes. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
That makes so much sense, though, too.
I have a colleague, I don't know if you know Ann Madden, but she was the one who was able to figure out there was a brewer's yeast from certain wasps, and she makes beer with it. So there you go.
I mean, these are obviously more extensive than we know. But for me, this just underscores microbes are just participating in everything.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
Vincent, it's a microbial world. We just live in
Of
it.
course. And humans try and duplicate that, right?
Yeah.
So they make huge processing plants making yogurt with defined starter cultures, right? And it's okay, but maybe it's really a lot better if you start it with an ant culture. Who knows?
You never
Possibly.
know.
Vincent, where we used to teach, we had a wonderful cafeteria set up for the students, and there was yogurt there, and I would have students bring in the yogurt. And we would just have a look under the microscope, and
Yeah.
I discovered it was not a monoculture in there. And when I started asking about it, it's because some of the cooks were making it at home and bringing in starters. And I'm not I didn't want to say any more about it. I was afraid that would be a violation of all kinds of rules. But no, culturally, people have domesticated microbes for all kinds of purposes, and they've domesticated us.
Yep.
Yes, who's running This Week in Microbiology? Maybe, Vincent, the title was whispered in your ear by some tiny creatures.
Who knows?
Who's in charge?
Not us.
Who's in charge? Well, this next paper that we're going to do, they literally cracked the code on a process of cocoa fermentation that was for millennia this beautiful, messy, spontaneous miracle. So, Mark?
Wait,
Sure.
before you go, couldn't you do a similar thing with sourdough starters, right?
Oh, absolutely. But everybody, they still don't have that down.
Yeah.
So Rob Dunn at North Carolina has a sourdough project where he's been collecting sourdough starters from all over the world to see how they differ from one another. I think this is great work.
It is.
I have a friend who loves her some ants, and I'm going to recommend she try different species of ants and just make yogurt with them. Not eat it, but find out what's in it. And that would be really interesting.
So the
Why
guy
not eat it? That's the thing. I mean, this is just yogurt. And I feel like I love Bulgarian yogurt. It's so good, but partly it's that way because the milk they use is so rich.
Mark, the guy with the sourdough, you should have him on Matters Microbial.
I would love to. Rob is a really great guy. So
yeah, that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah. You know what he did before, Vincent? He had the belly button microbiome project. I'm not making that up. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, now we move to chocolate, Mark.
We do. And my first question is, when do you think the idea of chocolate as a sweet was invented, Petra? Do you have any idea?
I'm trying to remember what I learned in history class, but I do know that chocolate is a new world food, and that people in the indigenous people of South America were drinking it, I believe, as a sort of unsweetened drink. And I feel like it wasn't until it got to Europe, and probably well after it got to Europe. So probably not even until maybe even the 18th century that it became sweetened.
That's correct. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the important thing to remember is that the idea of chocolate, when kids are, people are ringing at your doorbells for trick or treat and you give them chocolate, that's very different than how chocolate was normally used. And I love this idea of ethnomicrobiology so much. And I'm going to just go ahead and give the title and then give some more things. I don't want to get carried away, but I love the title. And this is from Nature Microbiology, September 2025. And it's a defined microbial community reproduces attributes of fine flavor chocolate fermentation. Now, the authors, and there's a long list of people, but the last two are Salt and Castrillo. But we have Golpachan, Moore, Ali, Suka, Flores Gonzalez, Herrera Ruca, Yang, Lim, Du, Fernando Barrios, Umaharan. And what you find out is that the last two authors are, and I love this organization, the Future Food Beacon of Excellence at the University of Nottingham in Nottingham, England. And I spent some time there learning things from Liz Sockett, so I like Nottingham. The other authors are from, and I love this, the Cocoa Research Center at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago. Also, some folks in Bogota, Colombia, and I've got a couple of there. So the fact is, it's a really nice mix of how this works. And what I have to tell you, it's all about food microbiology and communities, every bit of it. And I was just talking to students today because I was so excited about discussing this briefly with all of you. And I was asked, has anyone in class made kimchi or made sauerkraut And we have folks who've made kimchi, and I said, did you add any microbes to it? And they said, no. And in fact, because they're living on the phylosphere, not lettuce, cabbage leaves, and so they're naturally inoculated. And that's actually how vinegar was originally made. Same idea. You create the right kind of, and I'm going to use this word incorrectly, ecophysiology, the right kind of conditions for the organisms you want to live there. And what's really relevant to this is there's a series of things that take place as one group of microbes modify the community, and that creates opportunities for secondary, tertiary, and quaternary communities to make themselves available. That's really important. One of the best examples of this is how sauerkraut is made. And it was really interesting to think about. And what I was struck by as I read this paper is how similar it is to the work of Rachel Dutton and Ben Wolfe and their studies of how to recreate cheese communities. There were echoes all through this. And by the way, this idea of, and I had to look up how to say it correctly because I am not, despite loving microbiology, I am not cultural. Terroir is how I'm told to say it. And we're used to this idea when we're making cheeses. I think it's relevant to chocolate.
It is.
Right. And what's interesting here is how chocolate is made. And there are lots of places you can look to find this out, but the actual cocoa pods that you get contain the seeds and the pulp. And then you have to harvest those seeds and then you roast them. And we call them beans at that point. And then you have to let them ferment.
So do they ferment before they're roasted or after they're roasted?
Usually they roast them afterwards.
Yeah, of course. That would kill all the microbes.
Right. I just want to make sure because it got a little mixed up.
Yeah.
But does it kill the microbes? I'll come back to that.
Oh, no, we're not going to have spores. Are we going to have spores?
I'm not going to bring up spores. I'm sure there are, though. But the thing
tell you,
is,
Mark, I didn't even know that chocolate was fermented. This is new for me.
But it's
Really?
how
I had
it's
a really
fermented.
good seventh grade
It's-
teacher.
It's how it's fermented. And this is where it reminds me very much of cheese. You know, you have these cheese caves. Well, they basically put them in wooden boxes with tarps over them and things like that. And I found it fascinating. I really went down a rabbit hole with this because I haven't been eating chocolate for quite a while now, but I have to tell you, it's delicious stuff. Although people get really carried away with the best chocolate in the world, and I'm not going to go there because I have no idea what it is. It is interesting that for this, very much like the paper that Michael was discussing about, they actually had like experts who are certified experts who can evaluate how the chocolate tastes. Now, there's a time that I would have wanted that job. So much so that in Materials and Methods, they talk about how they cleanse their palates between tasting. I love the fact saying, and with, I believe, crackers and still water. Thank goodness it's not carbonated, right? So, I mean, it was very serious. And if you think about it, it's serious business when you're making chocolate. It's not just like Nestle is what I'm trying to say. So one of the things that struck me about this is the whole process of making it. And as most people know who do anything like composting, you often get microbes that generate heat. That happens during the fermentation of the cocoa beans. I shouldn't say cocoa beans. I shouldn't say coca. That's a little different. And it was really interesting how they went through the process. And as we've been alluding to in general, folks just did so much hard work on it. I'm looking over the paper now, and if you look at the papers, if you look specifically, if you're looking at figure 1, and may I say that I enjoyed this paper very much, but it bothers me when the figure legend is on a different page than the figure. I understand why they want to see how much stuff they can put in there, but they show that raising of temperature that you see. And they actually talk about the difference between the cotyledon part of what they're harvesting in the pulp and the stuff in the pulp. And you can see that in, I guess, the first frame of figure 1, which is A over time. So definitely you're changing the temperature that's taking place due to metabolic activities. I'm not going to critique anything that the authors say because I am not a food scientist, though I did play one on TV many years ago. What I will say is that they talk about abiotic and biotic processes. And I would argue that temperature is biotically produced in this case. But because it's also sun-dried, that's not quite as simple as that, is what I'm getting to.
Right. Are you going to talk a little bit about about where all this is happening? Because I think that was really something I didn't understand. I vaguely remembered it was fermented, but what was really cool is that it's fermented on the farm.
Yes. So
where it's harvested.
Yes, and there were 3 different farms they looked at that they have a history of, and this comes back to the terroir idea, I think, personally. So what we're talking about is the process of making it, and we should probably put a link up because this is an interesting topic about how chocolate is actually prepared. And you go through this business, as I mentioned, of actually harvesting the stuff and then letting it ferment. And some people dig a pit. They did not on their farm, but they mostly used wooden boxes. And they put burlap sacks over it, and that way they were able to measure the temperatures and all the rest. And it was very important to them to follow the way that the actual, and I'm going to say farmers, but maybe I should call them chocolate artisans because that's really what they are, or agronomists. They're the chocolate agronomists because it's very serious business. I thought that this was all processed, and it isn't.
Not for the fancy stuff.
Yeah, maybe for the stuff that I normally would eat.
Sorry, children of St. Louis, the stuff you're getting in the giant bag from Costco may not be treated this way.
Well, even when chocolate isn't very good, it's still okay. It's a misquote of Woody Allen, but you get the.
But I also, this idea of terroir, because I was talking about this paper with a colleague, my understanding of terroir, and I feel like this is something Michael will know, but my understanding of terroir is that it's where you grow the grapes and what the soil is like. And this is different.
Yes.
This is fundamentally different. So
it feels like the airwar or something might be.
Well, they say the box and the burlap cover, they're probably the sources of the microbes, right?
Yeah, right. But it becomes regional even. So it feels a little like terroir, but it's not, the iron concentration in the soil or something.
So could you import the burlap from South America to Brooklyn and get the same effect?
If you can get the same climate.
You get much more assertive chocolate if it comes from Brooklyn, right?
Exactly.
Another thing that plays into this is that chocolate can be like blended wine, right?
Yes,
where you take grapes from different farms and you put them together and ferment it. And so that most chocolates are blends, except single source chocolates. They're very rare. And I'll put a link to a video I watched just coincidentally last week. That these people tasted all the chocolate bars available. And it turns out like Madagascar is one of the few single source chocolate areas in the world. And, they also have to do free trade stuff where they don't get ripped off because if chocolate prices drop, the farmers get screwed. So they have to have a minimum price that they get and all that stuff. And so some companies are good and some are not. But single versus multi-source is another variable, right?
Yeah. No, I think it was very interesting, and they did bring up Madagascar. I'm going to say from Madagascar chocolate because I can't turn it into the location, in, like I said, my brain. But what I was going to say about this is that in this paper they also looked at they were doing SNP analysis of the actual plants to make sure that on the different farms, if they were terribly different, and so. I view this very much as someone like putting out a fire with a tennis shoe because they're all over trying to figure out what's going on and using really serious stuff to do that. I've been very interested in this topic in general because what we're looking at here is what comprises a community. Mm-hmm. So they definitely did all the work that we're discussing with this. And they were able to show that there were changes in the communities as the temperature went up and went down. And then they decided to really go into things deeply and to figure out what was in common. Now, to me, and I made a joke about it earlier, but it's true. When I worked in a company that did food science for a few years, and we often had to evaluate things that we were making. And they would come by with their clipboard and they say, take a bite of this and tell me what you think. How do you react to it? And I don't think it's like this. I think this is very similar to wine tasting, it sounds like to me, where you get certified for the ability to tell different things. And they actually, I don't know if listeners are aware of this, but there are a whole bunch of pathways in microbes that give rise to odorants that we're used to. You can get a hold of bacteria now that you can grow up in the lab that'll give rise to the smell of bananas and things like that. But they found groups of enzymes involved that give rise to the flavor development. Aminotransferases appear to do this. I love the fact that they actually went so far as to say aspartate 4-carboxylyase produces a sweet and savory flavor, and ethanolamine ammonia lyase generates the fruity volatiles, such as acetaldehyde. And so, it's a complicated thing. And how did they make sense of all of this? And what they did is something that amazed me. I guess you can do this now, but I wasn't aware of it, where you start to compare the pathways that different organisms have in populations. Because what they assert in the paper, and I believe them, is there's a lot of redundancy. Now, we were mentioning about terroir a little bit before, and I apologize if I was using the term incorrectly. I was thinking of it in terms of cheese caves, where they're absolutely some of the stuff in the cheese walls is getting into the cheese, and that's why you get reproducible cheeses. And that's what I think is going on with some of the ways that they're fermenting the cocoa beans. Is the same idea. So, and I do think that's happening. But the redundancy thing really interested me. And so they did pretty much every technique you can imagine, just as Michael was saying in his paper. And one thing that really struck me, because I'm watching our time, is they basically used metagenomics to assemble genomes for things they couldn't necessarily grow. And then they looked at different parts of the fermentation process. They asked the question what kinds of pathways were represented or dropped out. And this is where, and this is, I think, really important, they were able to come up with a group of 9 organisms that they felt would be necessary for this.
To make a fine chocolate specifically.
Right?
Well,
Yeah. Not
yes.
your average chocolate.
So
your
there's a name for,
fine
what was the average chocolate called? You remember the
I
name?
can't remember.
I-
They had some.
I think
It's a
they call
term.
it. I think they call it Mark food.
Mark food.
No, it's a fine chocolate versus a bulk chocolate or
Yeah,
something. like
bulk.
that?
They think
It
that
might
was
be
bulk
bulk.
chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bulk chocolate is the chocolate, our everyday chocolate.
Yes.
So it's interesting because could you really reduce things to 9? And I just want to remind people that even as few organisms as 4 together, like Joe Handelsman's work with the Thor communities in the soil, you get a plethora of different phenotypes from the associations between just 4. So
Hey, you
imagine.
just need 4 ants, Mark.
Yes.
Well, I mean, what's also I thought this was interesting because it's from the food science at University de los Andes. I think are the senior authors
Yes.
in their food science, and they have a really big food science. And apparently, Colombia, you can eat a different fruit every day and not run out of fruit. I mean, their ag is insanely amazing. But I thought it was interesting that I was a little worried when they came up with only 9. Right? Because it feels like, because it's not the terroir, there seems to be not that much difference about where you grow it. But it's like kind of like, here's our industrial secret in these 9 organisms almost. So I was curious what you felt about that. That kind of was like,
Well,
whoa.
if you think about it, the paper that we did a couple of TWiMs ago, where we were talking about the 21 organisms that trigger the development or onset or increase your risk for the development of pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
I think with that paper, along with this paper in concert with the ant yogurt paper, really is telling us that the microbes have this panoply of metabolic pathways, and its circumstance and combinations of various factors, and it's community microbiology, pure and simple. Or as our friends would tell us, it's simple, good old-fashioned microbial ecology that's influencing the development of these phenotypes that we're witnessing, whether it be chocolate, yogurt, or in the horrible case of pancreatic cancer.
So it's interesting to me, how do you know about these things? And they used human detection, I'm going to call it that, as well as HPLC. And they're able to determine what kind of odorants and flavorants, I just made that word up, but you know what I mean, are responsible for things. And I believe that what they did is they were able to identify of what was culturable from there. And I want to emphasize that point. What organisms had the requisite pathways. Now, I instantly want to say, but are they expressed? But they are. And you have to dig a little bit. It's table 8 in the supplementary. And they actually tell you what they're, and they call it SYNCOM, SYNCOM, for the synthetic community. And if you look it over, you see, oh, they've got a lactobacillus. That makes sense. And they have cytobacillus. Okay, you know bacillus are going to be involved. And let me scroll down here. And they have, oh yeah, they have, and then as I say, it's supposed to be 5 bacteria and 4 fungi. So it's not surprises. Tortosporula, Pichia, Bacillus, and they have some Saccharomyces and my good friend Acetobacter's in there. So the reason I'm bringing it up is that these 9 organisms have the pathways that are felt to be responsible for producing the kinds of odorants and flavor molecules that they expect to see in fine chocolate. And when they set up an artificial fermentation, and I love how they talked about they're trying to do the equivalent of the boxes and all the rest. And they're taking it very seriously and they're doing whatever they can. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you really look at a complex real world ecology and create a smaller version of it? And so they did their best. And their tasting panel says it has the right aroma and flavor profiles as necessary. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they just checked out the liquor for this.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't make chocolate. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, what was interesting is like this whole time, there are 2 regions or 2 farms that are very similar. And one is, sorry to like blow it. I was just like, I was just amazed that.
No, it makes sense for all the reasons when we talk about things like wines and cheeses. And so, you know, I could imagine that the equivalent of pick whatever gourmet you want might look down their microbiological noses about using this synthetic community for anything.
Sure.
But I'll bet you that that's worth a ton of money for making bulk chocolate.
Of course. But, you know, when you end up making chocolate, it may taste a little different. And there's also the scepter of making unusual tastes by manipulating the starter culture, right? You could do it ad infinitum. It doesn't have to be what exists in nature.
It could be modified, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the popularity, for example, of, I don't care for it, but a lot of people like orange flavored chocolate.
Well, right. I was wondering about that exactly, Mark, because the citrus would overwhelm the if you made a bad batch and you didn't get the fermentation quite right, you could salvage your product by adding something as strong as orange or raspberry, where the fruit tones would overwhelm the bad actors.
Or salt.
Salted caramels, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Vincent, are you aware of the people who've tried there in the synthetic biology community, and they've got a plasmid that encodes an enzyme that makes, I've forgotten the name of the compound, but it smells kind of like bananas. And then the problem is when you have that in E. coli, you do get the smell of bananas, but all the indole that's being made by E. coli does not smell pleasant. Right. So it smells like a mixture of bananas and sweat socks. So the people studying it had to knock out the production of indole in E. coli so it got the right smell out of it. And so I think it's a really interesting thing to think about because we take smells for granted, and obviously the microbial world uses it for signaling all the time. And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with signaling, it's just part of metabolism. Sure. But on the other hand, that's an opportunity for natural selection to happen. We know that geosmin that's being made by many actinobacteria attracts springtails, and then they in turn take them places. I've mentioned fruit flies and alcohol. Sounds like a joke, but it's true. Moving the yeast around. Perhaps there are, perhaps this is a way for insects to move the proper inocula around.
Well, one of the first things I learned as a young graduate student is how to make butter bits, that you sprinkle on popcorn to give it that buttery taste without actually putting butter. And that's, a fermentation product out of the mixed acid fermentation, acetylene. And that's what gives it this beautiful buttery flavor. And there's a fermentation company that's all they do is make butter bits. And they mass produce it. They have over-engineered the microbe to actually overproduce that molecule. Then they freeze dry it down and you have butter bits.
But
So
Mark, what I like here is they took these 9 strains and they dropped one out individually and
Mhm.
they did the fermentation, and they found you need all of them together.
Yeah.
I think that was very cool.
And what's good about that is it reinforces something I didn't think would be true. I would think it would take more,
Yeah,
or maybe
me too.
things are replaceable, but it isn't. And it is possible to drop 1 or 2 out of a group of 9, but you start to think, am I doing that with more than that? That's hard to do. And I think this is grist for the mill. I will say that I'm always concerned with the focus on things that are cultivatable.
Well,
But it worked.
what else can you do, right?
If you're in a department of food science, I think your obligation is cultivatable. But
I mean, it could make a difference, right?
it could.
Yeah.
But they say that this tasting panel said this full synthetic community exhibited flavor notes characteristic of fine chocolates. It doesn't mean they're going to taste the same
It's
as
true.
fine chocolate. So you
Right.
may have to do more. I mean, they agree we need to do more, but this
Yeah.
just establishes the concept that you could have a defined community and make pretty good, at least the liquor, right?
Well, that's what they didn't do. They didn't do mouthfeel. How does it feel in your mouth?
Yes.
I think it's all in this like liquidy.
Yeah,
So,
It's whatever the Spaniards took home with them. And
But
then added.
this is how they generally the sensory team. That's what I'm going to call them. The sensory team. That's how they evaluate chocolate with the liquor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
with the liquor, yeah.
it's important to know. And the other thing for listeners, I mean, it's really worthwhile to look at this paper and read the materials and methods. They actually discuss how they work with the sensory team, and it's
Yeah.
super serious.
And I was impressed that it was in Nature where they actually had methods.
Their methods were really awesome, actually. All their methods, even basic methods in here, are really good.
I mean, this is the importance of this, that this is a big deal commercially.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is huge. I mean, you can bet that they patented this collection of bacteria, right?
Yeah, that's what I guess I was hoping, like, please. But
But
the
the-
question
the-
is, like, we're used to bulk chocolate tasting kind of a certain way. I've read that actually Hershey's has a slightly more fermented or sour taste than other brands. I don't know if that's true. I'm not an expert taster, but I mean, the question is like, when you're looking for this kind of chocolate, you want this specific, like really high quality, but also certain flavors. But, you know, I don't think that kind of, it's kind of like wine. Like I like a
Mhm.
glass of wine, okay, but I don't care that much, but lots of people care a lot. So I feel like this is for those who care.
There's also different darkness of chocolates,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like there's 80% cocoa in some dark
Right.
chocolates, and so it depends on your taste. This video that I watched, they tasted every chocolate bar made, and they looked at the color. They weren't told the brand. They looked at the color. The snap is really important, also.
Right.
Like
that
if it-
indicates the fat.
If it mushes, they don't like that because it's not. And then of course they bite into it, and you can see the cocoa fibers and stuff in there. And you know, it depends on your taste whether you like 80% cocoa or less, right? That's a taste thing, but I don't know how that relates to that's making the actual chocolate,
correct.
right? It's
And
different.
I would just remind people to give me commiseration when I was a little boy and I loved me some chocolate, and I got up onto the counter and I got some of my mother's baking chocolate, which I thought was like eating chocolate. No, it is not.
You can taste the ferment in there, though. It's sour.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to think about we take our food for granted so much, and how it's made and how it was. And this is something Vincent brought up. Who discovered this stuff and how it became a cultural issue? And I mean, I know it's a pun when we talk about microbiology to say culture, but who came up with the idea? Like, you know, to bury something and then dig it up later and then
No.
or to drop
Hey,
ants and
look, do you know how almonds were first eaten by humans?
no, tell me.
So almonds are originally very toxic, right?
Yes.
And so back then in hunter-gatherer times, people would eat almonds and die. So people learned not to eat them. But one day a guy was walking around the refuse pile where people went to the bathroom, and he saw an almond plant growing. And the implication was that this came out of someone's butt, and therefore it didn't kill him. So he took the seeds and grew them, and they were free of the toxin.
Oh.
And that's how we got to the current day almonds that are not toxic to us anymore.
They don't have as much cyanide in them.
Yeah, they didn't have as much cyanide because apparently the one that didn't kill the guy was a mutant, right? But it's all accidental, right?
We are an empiric species.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I'm it's like I used to, and it's not original with me, but I would tell Elio, rest his soul, that there are bold mushroom hunters and there are old mushroom hunters, but there are no old, bold mushroom
That's right.
hunters. So this idea of trying things out is an amazing one to me. But we take it all for granted. And I send my students around to look at the different things in their lives that are products of fermentation. It's more than they think.
Well, in the old days, we didn't have so many regulations, so people just tried things even though they could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we have a lot of laws, and so people are afraid to try stuff. There's one thing I want to point out from this video of
Please.
chocolate tasters. Chocolate is great, but you shouldn't really eat too much of it, right? It's got a lot of sugar in it, and it's not good for you. So they say in this video, reduce the amount of chocolate you eat so you can eat a higher quality chocolate. Because a high quality chocolate is just apparently out of there, right? And Hershey's is not a high quality chocolate.
Oh, you're going to get letters.
I mean, Mr. Hershey figured out how to make nice milk chocolate. I mean, I don't know now what the milk has to do with it. You add milk or something.
Probably mellows the fermentation, so it becomes more palatable.
I mean, I assume you added when you're mixing the liquor and all of that stuff, but
it's really interesting, Vincent, and I'm sure that maybe this is part of your video, when they process it and they have to get the granule size lower. So it's like a really big deal, as opposed to what the Mesoamericans were doing, which was just grinding it up and adding water.
Yeah.
Chocolate's
a big business.
I've never had super fancy chocolate, so there you go.
I've had moderately priced fancy chocolate. I mean, like Valrhona is probably not fancy enough.
Yeah, Valrhona was in this video. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like that's like not a luxury chocolate. It's an upper echelon, but not upper third chocolate.
They had Godiva chocolate, which is supposed to be a luxury chocolate. I've had it.
Yeah, no, it is true. I think
Godiva is
fine.
So great.
No, the best chocolate I've ever had has been in Belgium.
So was it a dark chocolate or a milk chocolate? Do you know?
They have it all, but the dark chocolate, Belgian chocolate, the Belgians are like, for some reason, they've decided that I think that's the best European chocolate I've had is Belgium.
I like dark chocolate.
Even their kind of not so expensive brand Côte d'Or is so good. Now I have to find it.
But this is like the pizza discussion. It's it's religious to people. And when I have this discussion, I have friends who insist to me that Brazilian chocolate is the best in the world. Never had any, so I'll take their word for it.
Yeah, it's true. I can tell you that if you don't grow up with St. Louis pizza, don't try it.
Well, in this video, they taste a single source Madagascar chocolate, and one of them picked that as her favorite.
I see.
But not everyone did. People have different tastes. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
That's humanity.
I had such fun with this paper, Vincent. It really was a lot of fun.
No, this one is a little more involved than the first one. I mean, they really go deep into metabolites and genomics and so forth, and they reconstruct, right?
Yeah, what we didn't get to was that they even, and it's probably useful to put up a picture of a cross section of a seed, because they even look at like inside the seed, like kind of like, the human microbiome, they may look at your liver or your gut or your fingers or whatever. Here they're looking at different parts of the seed during the fermentation. And they talk specifically about the cotyledon, which are the baby leaves. If it wasn't becoming chocolate, it could become another plant. And then the testa, which is the sort of outside of so it might be nice to put that up.
Yeah. And what they're calling pulp, which doesn't look like pulp.
I think pulp is the endosperm.
Yeah.
Yes, the endosperm.
Image I'm looking at. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really funny to see one of the pods cut open. It really is interesting to see.
Yeah. It's not the most glamorous looking thing. But I mean, I think it's also worth saying, hey, for all these foods that we talk about all the time that, come from mostly Central and South America. So tomatoes, chocolate, corn, potatoes, right? All these foods that are sort of, we think of like Northern Europe as potatoes, Southern Europe as tomatoes, 400 or 500 years ago. I don't know what they were eating, but not those.
Cabbage. They were eating cabbage.
Cabbage, yeah.
Which, if you think about it, would you rather have a cabbage or a potato?
Potato.
I'd rather have. It depends how you do the cabbage. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, if you make coleslaw, I'd love that. That's great.
Yeah. My dad
Coleslaw
used
is
to
good.
make sauerkraut with it. And the
The
sauerkraut, we
sauerkraut
didn't
is
get
good.
into the conditions for sauerkraut, but the reason it works is because you pack it with salt, cabbage,
Mm-hmm.
salt, cabbage, salt, cabbage, salt. You bake in a giant, clean garbage can full of sauerkraut. I have
course.
no idea.
As you know, cabbage is full of baculoviruses.
Oh,
Oh.
yes.
When you eat cabbage or coleslaw or sauerkraut, you're eating a lot of baculoviruses, but it doesn't matter. They just pass right through you.
Yeah.
Kills all the insects in you.
All the insects that you've eaten from your ant yogurt. Yep.
Yes. Maybe that's what protects us.
Peripheral to that, Vincent, did you ever have students look for TMV in tobacco?
Oh, I'm sure he has.
Oh, I haven't, but I've heard stories
It's there.
of people, smokers going into a tobacco area and things get contaminated with the tobacco mosaic virus because it's so stable, right?
So I don't know about that, but I did the experiment when I was in graduate school teaching. I was trying to teach people not to smoke cigarettes. I know it's their business, and I would say, take out some of the tobacco and grind it up in some water, and then you abrade a tobacco leaf. If someone was growing it in the building, and you rub some of that on there, and we would get blight out of it. And so I tell them, you're smoking virus.
I think we should. So this is just since this is a Halloween episode.
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to see if any of you guys have jokes, micro jokes or Halloween jokes, because in St. Louis, you tell a joke. The kids have to tell a joke. They say trick or treat, and then you say,
Yeah.
"Do you have a joke for me?" And so I don't have a micro joke. I have my favorite joke, which
Go.
I don't
Let's hear
think will get bleeped. So
Let's hear it.
I heard this from a kid who was dressed as a scuba diver. So what does a fish say when it hits a wall? Damn.
Damn.
Oh.
Nice.
Okay,
You
so
know,
share with the children of St. Louis who may or may not be listening.
so Petra, I'm being haunted by the ghost of a chicken. It's a foul spirit.
That's good.
I think it's a poultrygeist. And you know what? I've called myself an exorcist to help it to the other side.
Excellent. Perfect.
But you wanted a micro joke. I've got one for you as well. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about the disease that's been going around with domestic birds? It's called chirpies. It's one of those canarial diseases. And the worst part, it's untweetable.
I like these multi-part ones.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Michael, where's yours?
Why was the microbiologist late to the Halloween party?
Why?
Because it took him a long time to culture a decent costume.
Okay. Yeah.
That's lame. I know.
No, that's fine. Do you have one, Vincent?
I don't have a micro one.
Okay, anyone.
Why did the mortician clock out of work early? He was dying to leave.
There you go.
Ooh.
Anyway, the which one? What did you say, Mark? What was your joke again? Remind me. The
I
chicken.
did too. Yeah, the chicken one. You like the chicken one?
Yeah, I like the chicken one.
Yeah.
It's good.
What Halloween candy is never on time for the party?
Tell me.
Chocolate.
Ooh, that's the
Oh,
chocolate
okay.
joke.
That ties into
Chocolate.
our.
Exactly.
What do you call two witches trick or treating together?
Tell me.
Broommates.
Broommates.
Nice. Hey,
We
Vincent.
need a rim shot.
I can't
Vincent,
wait for tomorrow night. Maybe we'll
Why
get
did the
some good ones.
microbiologist cross the road?
To get to the other side.
Slide.
Slide.
To get to the other slide. Yes. Yeah, that's good.
I'm here all week. Try the veal.
Try the veal.
All right, that was great. I love that. Those two papers were awesome.
Oh, I
And,
couldn't agree more.
Yogurt and chocolate, what a combination. But the broader implications, in this chocolate paper, they do say this could help farmers, in
Absolutely.
years when the crops yields are bad, maybe this could help, right?
Sure. And it would also, I think, help the bottom line of the research institutes that almost surely have patented the process, right?
Right.
I don't know that.
I mean, but chocolate beans, coffee beans, and many other commodities are the price is determined by the market, right?
Yes.
But that puts farmers at a disadvantage often. And so you have this emerging free trade idea where you get paid a minimum amount no matter what the market conditions. And I think that's good, right? So nobody goes out of business.
Well, again, think how labor intensive, seriously, making this is. The idea of making, and when I say this, I'm not putting down the folks who do this, but it's like making compost heaps. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, sure.
Did you notice, by the way, they had to turn these things over every couple of hours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder when they put the yogurts in the ant nest if they had to move them at all.
My guess is not.
Probably
because you'd disturb the ants and then they would leave and abandon the colony.
They'd drown if they...
They drown also, yeah.
I feel very bad for the ants. Yes, they're drowning. All right, that's TWiM 344, food, the foodie TWiM. I don't think we ever had 2 food papers before on TWiM, right? You can find show notes at microbe.tv/TWiM. If you like our work, please consider supporting us, microbe.tv/contribute. Michael Schmitz at the Medical University of South Carolina. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, everyone.
Patrick Levins at Washington University.
Thank you so much. It's been fun. And now I have some more jokes. If the kids don't have them, I like to give them one. So the next house.
That's good.
The joke.
Mark Martin's at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. Thank you, Mark.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
I'm Vincent Racaniello. You can find me at microbe.tv. I'd like to thank the American Society for Microbiology for their support of TWiM and Ronald Jenkins for the music. This episode of TWiM was edited by Ray Ortega. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time on This Week in Microbiology.